Duke basketball has made it to the round of 32. One down, several more to go. Number would be five, but we're only going one at a time here.
One at a time, one at a time.
And so now Duke will take on Baylor in the one versus, I think Baylor was the 9 seed, if I remember correctly here. And these are two teams. Baylor in their last 11 games is 5-6. Duke has a 12-game winning streak. On paper, this would be a little bit of a mismatch. The betting odds would say so as well. But this is March Madness, and lots of times there are mismatches on paper that do not come to fruition. So we're gonna break down this matchup here with Baylor, and then give you guys our predictions. So JD, what's the first thing that you're looking forward to in this game with Baylor?
Well, the first thing I'm looking forward to is that we're broadcasting, and as opposed to one shining moment occurring at the end of the tournament, I had to keep moving myself around my broadcast area to get out of the sun. It was a little tricky yesterday, so I apologize to our viewers. It was a little weird, but what am I looking forward to? I think that they have gotten a rhythm to how they play Duke, so that Sion James is the point guard. Everyone knows their roles and likes it. They enjoy playing with each other. And so I'm just looking at the Baylor game. I see no adjustment whatsoever necessary for the Baylor game. It will be a much harder game than the last game against St. Mount St. Mary's, but uh, I'm looking forward to another clinical Duke performance. In all I mean by that is they know what they've got to do in order to win and advance. So that's it.
I agree. I really liked the way Duke came out to start the tournament. No messing around. Got right to it. I thought the defense was pretty good. Coach Shire, he may have felt differently, but they only gave up 49 points, so I'm not sure how much better it could have been. I guess 40 points, but still, I thought it was a really impressive defensive performance to start the tournament by Duke. Um, and I thought offensively they found a good flow early. Lots of good ball movement. The ball didn't stick, which has been kind of a theme, but weren't quite sure how it would all work out. Um, with Cooper coming back, whether there'd be, as you said, whether it be a little bit of a slow start offensively, and that was not the case, which was awesome to
Not
see.
at
And I,
all.
I think in this game, some of the guys who didn't maybe have the best offensive games, like Con Knipple, Sion James, Isaiah Evans, and Mason Gillis, they could get going today, or I should say tomorrow, in the game against Baylor.
I think that's right, that there's a lot of possibilities for where more offense could come from. I think in the end, Flutter outscored us on offense by 2 points. Uh, and, uh, you know, not that is one of those March Madness completely meaningless statistics, but I think there is this opportunity for other players to get involved in this. And uh, look, if Proctor can give us another game like that, we know certain players love to go on a roll for the March Madness for the 6 games, but he just has to play. You know, every player on Duke, if they're hitting, that's great. It would be great also if we could keep the hockey assists because their passing is so good that it's often one pass leading to another, especially Cooper Flagg when he sees the court so well that maybe he doesn't necessarily always get the credit for the assist that starts the play. So my only real point there is, regardless of who is the scoring leaders for Duke, they all know that they have to play defense. And so they can just help the team as much by playing their incredibly aggressive defense. So it's very much what I look for. It's almost impossible to predict with this team which guy is going to be the leader. Yes, Cooper Flag. Yes, it's a chance that it's Proctor, but Khan could be the guy. And certainly, the way that uh, Foster just had a terrific game, that could easily be Mason Gillis.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as we mentioned yesterday, he shorted his 3-pointers, and he's 0 for 10 over the last 4 games, and so he could be the guy tomorrow. So,
Yep, and that's the beauty of this Duke team is that it's a game by game basis. As you said, yeah, yes, Cooper is probably going to be the number one scoring guy, but because of the way Cooper plays, he doesn't have to be, and that means that on any given game, as you said, it could be someone else, and it really depends on the matchups. And so, I think now's a good time to go through Baylor. They played. They really played 7 guys in their first round game. Their 8th guy, Marino Dubravicic, played 1 minute. So he is the guy that they will bring in if Norchad Omier needs a breather or is in foul trouble. But other than that, more often than not, they'll play even smaller with Jalen Celestine. So let me take a step back. Rob Wright, Langston Love, VJ Edgecombe, Jalen Celestine, and Norchad Omier were the starters for Baylor. And they are 6'1", 6'3", 6'5", 6'7", 6'7". Now Norchad Omier is 240 pounds. He's a big boy, but there's not a shot blocking presence on this team. There's not they're not a great rebounding team. They lost of Jangbuna earlier, about a month or so ago, and he was their 6'10", their real center. And Omier can play the center position, but you give up. He's a great rebounder. He averages nearly 11 rebounds per game and 4 offensive. But he's not a shot blocker, and that means in this game I expect Malawach, Flag, and Sion James, along with Con Knipple, to be able to attack the basket in different ways, right? With Malawach, the lob's going to be there in this one for sure. Cooper Flag and Sion are going to be able to attack the rim because there's not a shot blocker there. And similarly, Con Knipple should be able to get to the basket, and if he has it, just go right up. And if he doesn't, he'll pump fake and then put it up, probably for the and one. And I think all of that is going to be open for Duke. So I think one of the keys for Duke in this one against this Baylor team is going to be attacking the basket.
And I think I equally see it as Duke plays both ends of the court. So as much as the offensive opportunity is there, as you pointed out, for almost all of them, even Quick Draw's ability to occasionally go to the basket and look for the high bank off of the backboard, which could be a really this could be an opportunity for him there, unless they're trying to sag back to control the middle and help each other out, in which case it could be Quick Draw's game, in which case he's just going to go for 4 threes or something. But I look for it also to be the equal weapon in winning games for this Duke team is their defense. And I think they have a really, really good chance to keep Baylor to under 60.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about Baylor. Their best player. You could argue it's Norchad Omier for sure. It's either him or VJ Edgecombe, who is a freshman who also played for his national team over the summer. So Malawach isn't the only one who got some time playing for their national team on the senior level this summer. And Edgecombe did really well for the Bahamas. He had a slow start to the year, but in conference play, he's averaging 17 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and shooting nearly 40% from 3. Edgecombe is the guy to watch out for in terms of having an explosive game. And it's one of the things I'm curious about on the Duke side in terms of how they'll match up, who will take on the Edgecombe assignment. Because he is a little bit bigger. Typically, Proctor will guard like the best opposing perimeter player, but that's typically more of a guard, like point guard size, etc. Edgecome's a little bit bigger, so I wonder if it'll be Sion James who takes on that assignment with Proctor guarding Rob Wright, who who didn't start the season as the starting point guard for Baylor. We'll get to that in a few minutes here. But he's averaged about 11 points and 4 assists in conference play. And their starters, almost all of them played 30 minutes in the first game for Baylor. The only one who didn't was Langston Love, who played 29 minutes. So they're not the deepest team. They, as I mentioned before, they really play 7 guys. And Jalen Celestine can stretch the floor and shoot it, although in conference play he's only at 34%. A lot of their guys didn't shoot it as well in conference play as they did in non-conference, so there could be a little bit of a reset now that it's kind of a new year, if you will, for them. You know, it's a new tournament, so they might be having a
Throw
little.
it all out.
Yep.
Throw it all out.
So there's the chance that they shoot better in this game, but I think another key for Duke is limiting their open threes for Baylor. Because if they have to score inside against Duke, I think it's going to be a tough game based off the size mismatch in this one.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, yesterday they were 6 for 24 from 3-point range for 25%. So and that was in an 8-9 matchup. So I get they should shoot better percentage wise, but they did not shoot well from 3. And their 2 leading scorers yesterday were Wright, who had 19 points, and Langston Love, great name, who had 15 points. And so consistently, as you would point out, it's Edgecombe and Omier who had a double-double yesterday. But they were not the leading scorers. So they did get some help. It was kind of balanced on the court for the 5, but there's not much else, and they're smaller in their matchup against Duke, and they didn't shoot well from 3, and they're not going to be able to go inside. And it's going to be a tougher game than our first one, but all signs are pointing to a really good Duke outcome here.
I think a couple of stats on Baylor as a whole. They flashed a graphic yesterday during the game that they are apparently 15th in the country in defensive transition. So it might be tough for Duke to get out and run. We will see how that plays out because sometimes Duke's defense doesn't force a ton of turnovers, but they force a lot of missed shots, and that's where Duke can get out and run in transition. On KenPom, they're the 29th overall team. So as you said, a little bit, not a little bit, definitely a much more difficult test than the first round game. They're 16th offensively, and that is because they do play smaller, but they can, as you mentioned, between their 5 guys and even the guys who come off the bench, which we'll get to here shortly, they can score. But they are 56th in defense. The most interesting thing to me is they were like over 300th in tempo, which is surprising because they are a small team. So you would think they would play fast. It's so surprising to me that I'm going to double check. Yeah, 320th. I had to double check right now to make sure I had that right because it didn't really make sense to me. But they don't play exceptionally fast, which I think is another problem for them in this matchup. One thing going for Baylor, they do generate a fair number of steals. They're in the top 100 in steals and top 75 in steals per game, I should say, and top 75 steals overall. So Duke's coming off a game where they only turned the ball over twice, which is still, even putting the opponent to the side, to only turn the ball over twice in a full game is kind of insane. And as we mentioned yesterday, one of those was on a slip. So
Well, that's what's even more insane is that we could tell you the two times they turn it over. I mean, you usually look it up in the stats and they turned it over 5 times, 7 times, but you can't remember. I can actually remember the two turnovers. That's
yes,
crazy.
it is crazy. And speaking of turnovers, Baylor kind of balances out what they take away with what they give away, and they turn the ball over at a high rate. So they may force some steals, but they'll give them back. And that was notable, certainly in the Mississippi State game, where at times it got a little bit chaotic, it got a little bit sloppy on the court, and they will give it back to you. So I think as long as Duke can manage their own turnover. I'm not expecting only 2 again. That's kind of insane. But if they can keep it below, 10 for sure, they should be in a good spot here.
Well, and they had Baylor had 13 assists to 10 turnovers yesterday. So not a great ratio, and you know, I dare say not Duke's ratio yesterday, but
What is it,
um,
21 to 2 for Duke? Something like that. Pretty insane. All right. We've gone on long enough. I think it's time we address the elephant in the room. One of the bench guys for Baylor is Jaden Nunn, and the other is Jeremy Roach. And
Germ.
it is going to be very weird to see Jeremy Roach on the other side of the court in the Duke NCAA tournament game. He's obviously with us for 4 years. He had some up and downs, but mostly positive moments,
Oh,
especially the 2002 Final Four team where he had several games on that run where he was just awesome, as the guy who would get the key buckets for Duke on that run to the Final Four. And it was just a lot of fun to have Jeremy Roach at Duke. This season certainly has not gone the way he wanted it to. He went to Baylor. He said it on a few interviews. His whole goal was he wanted to be a point guard again. And I hate to say this, but if you looked at the roster with Baylor, it was going to be really hard for that to happen because yes, they had a lot of guys who are really like shooting guards, but it was a small team, and he kind of put himself in a similar situation to what happened last year at Duke, where there's a lot of small guards, and he was supplanted by Rob Wright as the starting point guard for Baylor, and he only played 14 minutes off the bench in their first round game. So I think there's a chance he gets a couple buckets, but at the same time, this could be a tough matchup for Jeremy Roach against the size and length of this Duke team.
um, I think that therein lies the explanation for what Jeremy Roach looked like sitting on the bench at the end of the game when it looked like they were going to win. And the realization was setting in that he was going to have to play against his guys. And, you know, it's your guys versus those guys. And you sort of know that you're not the starter. You're coming off the bench. You're not playing the role that you used to. You know that your team, certainly on paper, doesn't appear to have the weapons to be able to beat Duke. And maybe the realization was also setting in. I know your larger point was also well taken, which is, in a close game, the final few minutes, why aren't the bench players up screaming, waving towels, getting all excited, and it just wasn't there, and that does tell you a lot about a team.
It sure does, and it wasn't the first time I've seen that with Baylor, where certainly their assistant coaches are much more animated into the game than their bench, and that is is a major red flag, and it's a big, a huge difference between them and Duke, where Duke's bench is up basically the entire game, and that's from the sixth man, who right now I would say is Patrick Gangba, which is kind of strange because he started the year as due to injury and whatever, he's moved up the depth chart. But from Patrick Gangba all the way to Stanley Borden at the end of the bench, everyone is into the game. This team and this Duke team on several different occasions has talked about the value of guys like Neil Begovic and Spencer Hubbard and what they provide the team both in game. Like Begovic is a guy they talk about as somebody who they've gone to for advice, and he gives them tips. And Begovic also mentioned that now we're so deep into the season, that a lot of times the player will come to him, whoever it might be, and say what Begovic is thinking. And so that's how connected this team has grown. And then with like Spencer Hubbard, a lot of guys, whether it's Isaiah Evans or Tyrese Proctor, have talked about how guarding Spencer Hubbard has made them better defensive players because he's so quick, and they just love having him around.
Well, and I think to go further with your point about the reaction of the bench is it's not only that the reserve players, the guys coming off the bench at the start of the game are up and cheering and excited for Cooper Flagg, for Con Knipple, for everybody. It's when the starters come out, they're standing up and they're cheering for the whoever's on the court at that point, be it Darren Harris, who had a really great 12 13 minutes yesterday, or Caleb Foster, who had a really good stint, but they're all up and cheering for those guys. And it's to your point, they are a very connected team, which matters. And we're only talking about Baylor. So for the Baylor game tomorrow, that connectivity. And it's funny because, Jack, when I keep talking about how assists are capped, and so it's usually it is the pass that leads to a basket, and it's not like in hockey where it's one pass to another. That connectivity on the court of one pass to another pass to a basket, which happens quite frequently with Duke now. The ball movement is terrific, is also the connectivity that you see on the bench.
100%. And it's all, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's all connected, right? It's
It
all
is.
about, because if you're looking, and the guy's open in the corner and you're like, I don't really like that guy, or he shot it last time and I was open, he didn't find me, right? You build up some resentment, and then all of a sudden you start playing hero ball, and it's my turn, your turn, and this Duke team doesn't have any of that. It starts with at the top, with Coach Shire, and then your best player in Cooper Flagg being, I mean, he's the leading scorer, but he's a very selfless player, and I think Shire talked about how at the start of the season they had to kind of talk to him and say you gotta be a little bit more aggressive, and if that's the problem with your best player, you're in a good spot.
Well, and as who is it, Bill Raftery, the announcer? These guys love to feed the big fella. They love to find all of them. They all love, they're all competing for, is there a way to get it up to Mal? And now they like to, certainly also go into the
Gangba.
Gangba. And that Gangba is showing his offensive chops more and more. And so the idea that you're going to look for the big guy, you're going to look for whoever is open in the corner because the ball is swinging around so efficiently, or it either rotates around the outside or it goes into Mal or Gangba on top. now much better at sort of setting the screen and creating a play off of the screen. The Gangba is uh, just just appears that way right now. But nonetheless, the idea that if you're on the court, all five of you are involved. It is not like, to your point, well, I'm the leading scorer. I'm going to get my points. That is not the way, and that is set from the top from Cooper Flack. That what do I need to do to make my team win?
Yeah, and I feel like Malawach is a better. He's the better screener, and He's the lob threat of the two bigs, and he hit another 3-pointer in the last game, which is
Number
something.
four,
Yeah, which is something that even when he wasn't connecting, you and I both felt like he should keep shooting them because he's got great touch. And so I hope he continues to get his shots up. And Gangba is the better passer. He found Cooper Flag on a nice backdoor cut. And then Gangba, as you said, his ability to score one-on-one in the post is just, it seems to grow each game. And that's something where even with Omir in the game, he could look to do it. And certainly if he's not guarded by Omir, we've got to look for Gangba in the post because he will have a big mismatch in this game. JD, I think it's time. Everyone, drop your score predictions in the comments. You want to go first today, or should I go first?
you look ready. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. I think, as you said, it's a little bit a more difficult matchup, but I still don't think this is going to be a close game at the end. It might be close early, but I think as the game goes on, Duke will separate. I've got Duke winning this one 85-67.
18-point spread.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I like the 85, but with Shire just going on and on about defense, I actually have the spread farther. I think the beatdown continues. So I have it 85-59.
Did you already have 85, or did you?
I thought it was going to be in the 80s. So
Okay.
I didn't think it would be in 80 to 85 range. So when I heard your 85, I said, I kind of like that.
Okay. All right. All right.
And, but I had said earlier that I thought their
You did.
opportunity for their defense was going to be very strong, and Shire just hammering away on their lack of defense. I mean, and when you and I are going like, how much more defense did you want out of them yesterday? And
I mean he clearly hammered that message home during halftime because they went from 28 points to 21. And to your point earlier, I I might be wrong about this, but I think Houston was the only team to hold their opponent to less points than Duke. So Florida was the only team to outscore Duke. From what you said earlier, and I think
2 points.
we're 95% accurate here. There's a chance we might be wrong. And then Houston's the only team to hold their opponent to less points, but Duke was the most dominant first round win with it was a 44-point margin. So I think both of us are in agreement here. Duke should win this one easily by double digits and potentially 20 points against Baylor, and it should be a fun game and hopefully another Duke win, and we get to roll on into the Sweet 16.
There's something wonderful about even just saying, "Yep, we're in the Sweet 16." That's always been the thing because they've always tried to come up with the Final Four, the finals, the Elite Eight. Back in my day, the Great Eight, um, the Field of 32. Did you make it to the 64? Now there's the playing game, but the Sweet 16. That was always, always, always historically, did you make it there? It required you to get your first two wins And it meant that a lot of teams that you might not have thought who were going to get there could go get their first 2 wins and make it to the Sweet 16. So I certainly hope and look forward to our next broadcast, being optimistic, when we get to preview Duke's Sweet 16 game.
Well, you jumped the gun because our next show will actually be the post game of the Duke Baylor game. But yes, hopefully we will get to do another preview. Knock on wood, everything goes well. We will see you guys Sunday, somewhere between 5 and 5:30 after the game. So please subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 1,600 by the Sweet 16. Please like this video, drop a comment with your score prediction. What do you think is going to happen in the Duke versus Baylor game? And share it with a friend. And we will see you guys soon. Peace.